of Psychiatry under the leadership of Dr. Professor Ramarao sir. I would like to welcome all of you to this useful program, and also I'd appreciate the steps taken by Dr. Ardhanari and his team. I'd like all of you will get benefited by this meeting. So this is actually a very useful talk regarding the male sexuality and infertility. Thank you very much. Please participate actively in this meet and get benefited. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those words, sir. I now request our HOD, Dr. Ramarao, to start us off with a few words. Sir? Okay. Okay, I guess there is some technical issue on that side. Okay, let us begin.
Sahar, could you please call sir and then find out if there is any technical issue from his side.
Okay.
Sir was online only. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just call him. I'll just give him a call.
Yeah, sir, wanted to introduce him.
I guess he's not unmuting himself, sir. So
oh, okay. Then I think you have to ask him to unmute himself.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, Sahar.
I now call upon. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sahar, can we go into the program?
Yes, absolutely. So I now call upon Dr. Ardhanari and Dr. Divya to help us educate ourselves upon this particular topic. So I shall be asking them a couple of questions, a few questions, and they will enlighten us with their. Okay. So starting with puberty, this question is directed to Dr. Divya. Ma'am, what is puberty in men, and what are the physical and hormonal changes associated with the same?
Okay. I'm very happy and glad to be associated with Meenakshi Medical College, the Department of Psychiatry, and professional help who's really taken great efforts in organizing this program. So I'm Dr. Divya, fertility consultant at MS Women Care Center, Kanchipuram, and I'm really happy to be in this program. So the first question is about puberty in boys. So this puberty is the stage very important stage in a child's life, in anybody's life, whether it's a girl or a boy. So there are a lot of physical changes which happen in the body, and there are a lot of emotional changes which happen in the mind as well. And this is the stage where all of us learn the difference between the good and the bad. So a lot of emotional support from the parents, from friends, from teachers, from all especially the closely related family members is very essential during this stage in anybody's life. So this puberty in boys starts from the age of 8 years and it may complete around the age of 14 years. And usually it takes about 3 to 4 years for the whole process to complete. So there is suddenly loss of increase in the hormone called testosterone. So the first changes which the boys may notice is that there is a slight increase in the size of their external genitalia, the testicles, the scrotum, and then the penile size increases. There is appearance of pubic hair, axillary hair, and then sudden growth spurt. That is, every year the boy starts to grow at least 3 to 4 centimeters, and and the next thing will be they become more muscular. They start sweating a lot, and sometimes the boys may also experience something that's called as wet dreams. That is, they may have involuntary ejaculations during the night. So all these are considered as signs and symptoms of puberty. And whenever a child asks about these changes which are happening to them suddenly, because they don't know what it is. So it is the duty of the parents to teach them about these changes, and duty of the teachers to have some sort of education in schools regarding all these changes. So I hope the question is answered. Any more doubts?
No, ma'am, but that sounds
Yeah,
like quite a complicated and confusing stage for the youngsters.
I know.
They tend to go through and experience a various amount of emotions during this phase.
Yeah.
So, to Dr. Ardhanari, how can males deal with all these overwhelming emotions and feelings?
Yeah. See, adolescence is something that is very common for any person that is born. Okay. So, like how there is physical development, there is something called as mental development, and there is something called as emotional development. So, every stage of development has to be, achieved and fulfilled at that particular point of time, and they have to move on to the next stage of development. Likewise, adolescence is one of the most complicated and one of the most beautiful periods that anybody experiences. When it comes to men, usually there are a lot of complications like identity crisis, sexuality, identification of what kind of sexual preference they have. All these things are usually initiating themselves during this particular phase of adolescence. So usually children will be very emotionally labile during this particular period of time. They'll be very impulsive, they'll be very emotional at this point of time. So it is better for them to go through that particular period with a lot of grace and with a lot of normal things that is happening around them. So I would suggest that there is nothing that you need to do in specific for you to manage this particular emotional incontinence or emotional variations which are happening during this particular period of time, because it is all because of the hormonal influences and because of the environmental factors that each and every person experience. Unless and until there is a significant amount of deterioration in their performance, or if there is any socio-occupational impairment or socio-educational impairment in that particular child or that particular boy, there is no need for any specific treatment to be followed. Only thing that you can do in this particular age group is to do a lot of positive reinforcement in these people. We can do positive reinforcement that gives you a very good result. Say, what is positive reinforcement? You try to give them a lot of rewards and ask them to change their bad behavior. That is what you can actually practice in this particular age group, because when you question them, when you put them a lot of rules, their usual nature itself during that time becomes very impulsive or very irritable. So the possibilities of them to get into a conversation or a fight or a deviant behavior is a little more during at that particular point of time. So if it is taken in the right way, it can be handled in the right way also. Small mistakes can be allowed unless until it does not affect a person's life in a grievous way, or any other person's life in a grievous way. And if not, you can just allow them. They just have to achieve that development in a complete way and move on to the next stage of development, that is adulthood.
Oh,
Yeah, that
thank
would
you,
be
sir.
my answer for this question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
moving on to the next question. This is directed again back at Ma'am. It's a common myth that men with a larger organ experiences more pleasure while having physical intimacy. Is this true? And what determines pleasure?
Okay. So definitely the larger organ size does not determine pleasure, and size does not matter with performance definitely. So and usually when the organ is a little larger, some women may experience vaginal tears, which is very common, and a lot of times infections for both the male partner and the female partner also happen due to these small vaginal tests which may go undiagnosed at all. So yeah, so it's definitely a myth, definitely. Yeah, and
Thank you,
Dr.
ma'am.
Athanati will take over regarding the psychological part of this myth.
Yes, sir.
Hello, can you
Yes,
hear me
sir.
now?
Yeah,
Yeah, when it comes to actual sexual knowledge, our country has got only very limited knowledge. Okay, more than the limited knowledge, our country seems to be affected with a lot of misconceptions which are around this particular sexual practices and individual sexuality. So one among that is the size of the penis and the duration of the physical intimacy that these people are expecting. Usually what happens is, where do you get this knowledge from? They get these kind of knowledge from adult movies and usually these people get these kind of information through word of mouth. As that in schools and all, some people believe that if there is masturbation, then there is going to be a lot of problems in consummation or in performance later on. And they say that penile size is important, and the longer the duration of physical intimacy, the better the as an orgasm, better the performance will be. So those kind of lot of misconceptions are there in this particular field in our country. So what we need to understand is that we need to understand that to every country and to every type of human being, there is a lot of races, right? Indians will have one particular set of physique and one particular type of development. Okay, what is our normalcy is what we need to know from proper sources. Only then we'll be able to understand whether it is correct or not. And we need to understand that normal duration of physical intimacy is only for about 15 to 20 minutes for a male. And
All
for
right.
female, it is almost similar. They need to consider the physical intimacy not only from the act of copulation, from also from the act of foreplay and other things. The emotional connect between the husband and wife, or the male partner and the female partner, also carries a very significant amount of value in this particular physical intimacy. So we need to find out what exactly is correct, what exactly is applicable to that particular person. Even when you find out the normal range, it varies from an individual to another individual.
All
Okay,
right,
so we
sir.
need to find out from the right sources. Once we do that, we'll be able to do. Yeah. One small request, Sahar. Once you ask the next
Yes.
question to madam, could you please call HOD sir and tell that he'll be connected again.
Okay, okay, sir, definitely.
Yeah, you can ask the
Uh,
question and then you can go back to sir.
okay, sir. Actually, this question, as you spoke, you brought up masturbation. That is also another highly stigmatized topic, and some cultures even believe it to be a sin. So, for men, how do they overcome this, and how do they know what is the right thing to do regarding?
Yeah, thank you. I'll continue answering your question about the masturbation while you can unmute yourself and then finish off that process. Yeah. When it comes to masturbation, we need to understand that masturbation is just a normal process of adulthood or early adulthood or adolescence. Uh, People think that masturbation is a sin. People think that masturbation is associated with a lot of diseases or a lot of discomfort or a lot of discrepancies in their adult sexual life. It is definitely not true. In our country, India and its surrounding country, there is a false belief that the preseminal fluid or the early morning uh, hello, can you hear me? Is it audible?
Yeah, yeah, you're audible,
Yeah.
Dr. Rathanayake.
Usually, men, it is normal for any male to have early morning arousal during sleep. During that time, the preseminal fluid will be ejaculated. Many people misconceive that that is semen. They think that it is because I have masturbated a lot during my childhood or during my adolescence or early adulthood. I'm getting this kind of a problem. I'm experiencing this kind of a problem. That is something which is leading to a major problem nowadays called as Dart syndrome. Dart syndrome is actually a misbelief or a false belief that all the energy in my body is being drained out through the seminal fluid or the preseminal fluid, which is getting ejaculated in the early morning. They believe that they have excessive masturbatory guilt, and they believe that they will not be able to sexually perform during their adulthood or post marriage. And they also have a lot of misconception that they will not be able to give birth to children, or they will have permanent infertility. Male infertility is what many people believe. This particular false belief leads to significant anxiety or severe state of anxiety, which is characterized by performance anxiety, inability to perform, or fear of performing, which also leads to significant amount of depression. So depression itself again causes loss of libido, loss of interest in sexual activity. So when there is no sexual activity, there is very less chance that particular person uh, you know becomes capable of having a physical intimacy, or that itself becomes a reason for infertility, is what I'm trying to say. So what we need to understand is that masturbation is completely normal. If somebody has the sexual urge, they can definitely masturbate. Maybe you can limit the number of times that you're masturbating. Say for example, in a week once or twice you can definitely masturbate. That is considered to be normal. When you are not obsessed with that particular thing, then it becomes extremely normal. Okay. The problem arises only when you are obsessed, when you are exceeding in number. If some people uh, you know have to masturbate about 3 to 4 times per day, it causes some amount of tiredness. See, every time somebody ejaculates, it causes tiredness. People think that all the energy is being drained. They're wasting a lot of blood and semen, is what people think. But it is not something like any physical exertion is going to cause some amount of tiredness, which again will be restored. This is just a temporary phase. After some time, they will regain their energy and they can resume their normal activity, is what I'm trying to say. It is absolutely normal for an individual to masturbate whenever there is a need. And masturbation also reduces a lot of risks like impulsivity or aggression. Sexual satisfaction by self uh, you know makes the person comfortable, because it helps him to control his sexual urges, and it helps him control a lot of violent acts. Lack of knowledge of deprivation of or deprivation from these kind of normal processes usually might lead to violent crimes or somebody forcing themselves on somebody else. So the rate of this particular thing also can reduce when there is a healthy practice and knowledge about these things. Yeah, that would do it.
Very rightly explained, Dr. Radhanari, and very clearly explained. I think usually they have a lot of misconceptions regarding masturbation, and you've clearly jotted out and cleared off all the doubts. Really, yeah.
Thank you. Sahar, you're not audible. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So, ma'am,
Apology accepted.
coming back to the question, ma'am, could you tell us more about what exactly male infertility is and what are more common causes of the same? Also, what is erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and other semen related issues in male infertility?
Okay. So we have coined the term infertility when a couple is unable to achieve a pregnancy within 1 year of unprotected sex. So when you come to the causes, we can divide it into three types. One third is caused by female factors, the other one third is caused by male factors, and the other one third can be unexplained or combined both male and female factors. So world over, universally, if you see the semen parameters have drastically fallen down, and it is very common that we see more number of decreased concentration of the sperms and very poor motility, poor morphology, and all this has been attributed to the environmental pollutants, herbicides, pesticides, and water contamination, which has been happening recently. So, coming to the causes of male infertility as such, common habits in the teenagers or in the college-going kids, smoking and drinking. So, this can drastically affect the semen quality, later causing infertility. And other organic causes like even erectile dysfunction can cause male infertility. And for example, hormonal causes like testicular failure or hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, hypothyroidism, hyperprolactinemia, diabetes, and atherosclerosis, all this smoking, all this can lead to male infertility. So, which I want to discuss is about erectile dysfunction. So this is very common in males, and most of the males suffer in silence. And usually, this problem is diagnosed only when the woman comes to the clinic with infertility. And if the clinician misses to ask questions about the sexual history, so this condition will be completely ignored, and the treatment modality is completely different for erectile dysfunction. And we won't get a proper success rate when we don't identify this problem. So, coming to the causes, this can be divided into two major parts. One is organic causes, physical causes, and the other one is psychological causes. So, if a person is suffering from depression, high stress levels, anxiety, some marital despair, and marital disputes, and then financial debts, all these can lead to erectile dysfunction. And coming to the organic causes, age is a very important factor. As age advances, the quantity as well as the meaning erectile dysfunction becomes very common, plus diabetes, hypertension, smoking, alcohol, any other neurologic diseases, any history of trauma or surgery in the pelvic area, and if the child during the childhood period has had any chemotherapy or radiotherapy, again this can cause erectile dysfunction. And I would like to insist that some of the most commonest drugs, like a few antihypertensives, anti-epileptics, antidepressants, cimetidine, all these can lead to erectile dysfunction on when used on a chronic basis. So, whenever a patient presents to us in the clinic with infertility, it is our duty to do a semen analysis, ask the sexual history properly, and evaluate the male partner completely, rule out all these causes, and then only go to the management. So it is of no use just writing drugs and giving to them and not evaluating them in a detailed manner. And So when you come to the treatment of erectile dysfunction, uh, few drugs can definitely help them, like sildenafil, tadalafil, which are the latest drugs available, with minimal side effects. But it has to be borne in mind that both these drugs are contraindicated in heart disease patients, meaning who have coronary artery disease. These drugs should not be given. Some other methods like vacuum devices or prostaglandin pellets are also available, but these are not widely used. Usually, when the underlying medical disorder is corrected, this problem of erectile dysfunction gets corrected by itself. And these patients definitely need a lot of emotional support from the wife, especially, and they may need even psychological counseling properly to overcome from this problem. They usually have lot of fear and that guilt of not satisfying their sexual partner. So all these can again lead to stress and erectile dysfunction. So it has to be a combined treatment when it comes to multidisciplinary, meaning the gynecologist has to involve themselves, the psychologist, psychiatrist has to involve themselves, and the wife also has to be very supportive for these patients. And the next one will be premature ejaculation. So what is premature ejaculation? Recurrent ejaculations which happen even before the man wishes to do so, meaning there is ejaculation even before penetration, that is, or just after penetration. If the intravaginal ejaculatory latency time is less than 2 minutes, then this is diagnosed as premature ejaculation. And a lot of men have this myth going on in their mind that the erection should not be lost. It is not so. It is a normal phenomenon that after ejaculation, erection will be lost. And these patients come to us telling that they have erectile dysfunction rather when the problem will be premature ejaculation. So it is very important to differentiate between these two conditions, and the treatment modalities also differ for these two conditions. Age, obesity, stress factors, financial debt, and then marital conflicts, all these can cause premature ejaculation. And when it comes to the treatment, few medicines like dapagliflozin have proven really beneficial in treating these patients. So, and it is the duty of the fertility consultant and the clinician to elicit the sexual history for the infertile couple. Otherwise, we won't be able to give them a proper, we won't be able to arrive at a proper diagnosis, and the treatment modalities for these sexual disorders are completely different. We may be losing on achieving a pregnancy earlier, meaning, for example, if you treat erectile dysfunction with tadalafil, or if you treat premature ejaculation with dapagliflozin, within 3 months, most of the pregnancies occur spontaneously without any other medicines at all. Otherwise, they may even land up in IVF, which is a very bad state, I would say. So it is the duty of the fertility consultant or any clinician to elicit the sexual history properly. Yeah, I hope the doubts are clear now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for clearing them up.
Yeah.
Now,
I'd like to add something to whatever ma'am has told about infertility.
yes, sir.
Of late, we have been noticing that more than 50% of the cases of infertility are because of male infertility. What is the basis of infertility? What is the basis of all the people who are suffering from infertility? It is a need for a child, right?
Yeah.
It's basically they need to have child. That is the ultimate goal. So it is termed as infertility. Whether the male is affected or the female is affected doesn't matter. What we need to understand is that in our country, when somebody is not giving birth to child, it automatically becomes the girl's problem or the female's problem. So this kind of an attitude, as long as we people are going to hold on to it, there's not going to be much of a difference. In front of our eyes, we are noticing that there is a significant increase in number of people who are facing infertility, wherein the cause is because of the male.
Yeah.
The first step in this particular treatment is to accept, yes, okay, maybe the fault is with me. I need to do, only when I accept that the fault is with me, I can do something about it. There is absolutely nothing wrong
Usually,
in
men
accepting.
tell us this history until and unless we question them.
Yeah,
So none of the men come forward and tell us that I have this problem. Very rarely, yes, I agree that men come forward and tell this problem. But out of 100, maybe one or two come out with this problem. But otherwise, the lady gets blamed for the problem of fertility, infertility. Yeah.
because that they take it like a pride, or they take it like an insult to their masculinity. It's not like that. See,
And even
ultimate
the
goal.
women, and even the women I've seen, Dr. Ardhanari, they're not aware of what is sex and what is sexual desire and how to have sex. Most of them are not even aware. I have seen people who are married for 5 years, 6 years, and not having a proper position. They don't know the position. They don't know how to have intercourse. They don't know what is ejaculation, what is erection. So they're completely oblivious about all this because there is lack of sexual education, sex education in schools and colleges.
Actually,
So,
the lack of proper knowledge is the basis for all these problems. They either
yeah.
know what to do,
Hmm.
they neither know what is wrong with them, and even if there is something wrong, they are reluctant about coming forward to take treatment and make things better. In fact, when it comes to male fertility, just because they don't want to go and then agree that I'm taking treatment, they keep on prolonging it to an extent that the female actually becomes the factor, or actually she becomes the reason for the infertility.
You know.
They prolong it so much that the girl or the female loses her fertility age, and
Yeah.
ultimately they are not able to achieve whatever they wanted. Instead, earlier they intervene, or earlier they accept there is nothing wrong. You're just trying to treat some kind of inability that you're having for some kind of a benefit, for some kind of a happiness, is what you can take. So the
Yeah.
initial or the first step to march towards treatment of infertility is to accept whoever the fault is with. Ultimately both of you are going to together be involved in producing your own offspring. So that should be the attitude, is what I would request people who are here suffering from this kind of an illness,
And there's
because that
another
would
thing
make the
also.
treatment and the outcome easier and better.
Okay. And I would like to add something, Dr. Ardhanari.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we have seen patients on the other end of the spectrum also. See, their semen reports would have been normal all through. Okay. Suddenly, one semen report, if it is abnormal, so this adds up to a lot of stress in men. Okay. For example, if a woman is having a problem, like she's having a big fibroid or she's having a big chocolate cyst, and you advise them surgery, immediately they're willing for surgery. Okay, but when you treat them for this male infertility, you give them some antioxidants to boost their semen count and motility. None of them usually take it properly, as far as I've seen. And okay, and one semen analysis which has given their concentration and motility is very low. This adds to a lot of stress in men. This can again lead to premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction and leading to infertility again. So this is another spectrum of patients also which we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
That again leads us to increasing the awareness from our side.
I
A lack
know.
of knowledge, lack of knowledge automatically provokes fear in them.
I know. I know.
They don't understand that this can be corrected. They take it emotionally rather than trying to take it in the right way. So if we provide a lot of awareness and motivate them to towards a better future, I think all these problems will come to some kind of a resolution in a much better way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sahar, you can ask the next question. Sorry for that. You have to unmute yourself, Sahar.
Yes, sir. Sorry, that was a very interesting to and fro. It was nice to see and hear so much about the current problems that couples are facing. Another question to Dr. Arjunari. Why is gender identity disorder considered a pathological condition by some people? And why is it wrong, and how can that mindset be changed? There's a saying that a person's sexual orientation is established at childhood. So, what are your views on that?
See, understanding about sexuality, understanding about one's own sexual preferences, all these are in a much better font when it comes to Western countries, because there is a very strong sex education that is happening right from their childhood, right from their kindergarten. They during kindergarten they try to educate them about good touch and bad touch in a very extensive and elaborate manner, and they train them to protect themselves. Later on, during their adulthood or adolescence period, they give them a lot of information about the sexuality, about puberty and other things. So when these children grow up in Western countries, they, they are able to adapt to these kind of things in a better way. They are able to have a better understanding about their sexuality and their sexual preferences. But unfortunately, in our country, it is a huge taboo to talk about sexuality. What is safe sex practice? What is unsafe sexual practice? What is your sexuality? To talk about this itself is a huge taboo, and it is an insult for the family. If a boy or a girl goes and when you're a child, if you go and ask about their physical intimacy or their sexual parts, they usually get a few slaps, or they get scolded by the parents in our country. But that should not be the case, because till the time that you're getting married, you're not supposed to know anything about the physical intimacy. They judge your character, they judge your personality in case if you discuss freely about the sexuality or your sexual preferences till you're getting married. But on the day of marriage, you should consummate, and you should make the girl pregnant. This is what our country is stuck in. So we do not know.
The couple knows everything when they are married.
On that particular day, they are supposed to know everything. That is exactly what we are facing. We have faced a number of people who do not know what physical intimacy is, how we have to go about physical intimacy. Because there is a lot of contribution from the cinematic universe that we have built up, around ourselves. They do not know what is physical intimacy. There is a significant lack of knowledge, because many people, find all unwanted ways or unnatural methods. They think that is what is sexuality. That is what is the normal process. It is supposed to be the parents who are supposed to educate their children about their sexuality and their sexual preferences. Then we need to have an acceptance of their sexual preferences, provided that is genuine. Till now, sexual preferences, that is sexual orientation, was considered to be a sin. Lot of religious environments were there that homosexuality was supposed to be a sin, and we have always seen people who are having gender identity disorders. We name them. That is their physics. That is their physique. That is their hormonal influences, and that is what they are. Is it not? So we need to accept them. We are marching towards a future where everything is accepted. Now it is legalized. If it is of same sexual orientation, even marriage is legalized now. Even that we are starting to accept. One thing which I would like to stress upon is gender identity disorder. Some people who are biologically born as males, they might emotionally be females. That is what you call as gender identity disorder. If it is a disorder which can be corrected, we can definitely do something about it. But there is another condition where they want to be like that. They are like that, and there is nothing wrong in that. So we need to be supportive of them. We need to understand their pain. We need to understand whatever lifestyle they are going through, rather than making fun of them, rather than portraying them as an insult for the community and for the family. It's better to understand because they are our children also. Once you attach that particular emotion to it, for a country which is overflowing with a lot of emotional value, why can't we accept this particular thing? I think that this has to become a pandemic. Feeling empathy for another person should actually spread more than corona. Only then things are going to settle down. At this particular point of time, I would say there is a significant reduction in the amount of empathy that our people are having for another person. Many of people are become extremely selfish nowadays, maybe because of fear, partially maybe true, but generally our empathy towards another person is significantly reduced. Our need to make fun of another person has significantly increased. And a reason for that is I need some relaxation. I need some fun time. I'm enjoying whatever other person is doing, or I am enjoying whatever I am doing to another person. If it doesn't hurt the other person, if he's taking it in a jovial way, if it is happening between friends, that is different. But for a person who is affected with this kind of a problem, don't you think as a responsible citizen, it is our responsibility to be supportive? If you are not able to support, if you are not able to be supportive, well, don't make it worse, is my humble request. This is going to be a problem, but I am pretty sure that in future we will find ways to bring about a huge change. Slowly it is there, it is coming. Next question, sir.
Definitely, sir. This is directed to ma'am. Ma'am, STDs are on the rise these days. So this is a question about how can STDs be prevented and what are the risk factors to contract an STD?
Okay. So in Indian scenario, if you see, out of 100, 6 to 8 people are affected by sexually transmitted diseases. The most commonest being syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, HPV, human immunodeficiency virus, and then lymphogranuloma venereum. All these can cause sexual, and hepatitis B. So all these diseases usually present with very mild symptoms, and they're usually silent killers. So these infections are definitely on the rise, especially in male homosexuals, women sex workers, and individuals with multiple sexual partners. So whenever a person is having unprotected sex, the chance of sexually transmitted disease definitely increases. And when you come to the, for example, in today's scenario, premarital sex is definitely on the rise. So a word for the youngsters, if whether it be the girls or the boys, if you're saying yes to sex, then you have to be responsible for your sexual health. So, for example, I have seen one or two patients in our clinic and even in our UG and postgraduate days, antenatal patients, pregnant patients coming with HIV positive, they'll be diagnosed only after they are pregnant. So they won't even know that they have acquired this disease until and unless they are tested. So when a woman especially acquires these diseases, it can be transmitted to the fetus also, which cause devastating effects on the fetus. There are a lot of congenital anomalies associated and a lot of health risks for the mother also. And whenever a woman or a man is diagnosed with these sexually transmitted diseases, they are treated like a social outcast, definitely. And they are denied of proper treatment in some hospitals, or they are denied of proper channels through which they can get proper treatment. Though the Indian government has created a lot of programs to decrease and to promote usage of condoms and all these barrier contraceptives, uh, the Indians we don't have the awareness. We don't know what is right and what is wrong and how to prevent these diseases. Though corona is rapidly increasing, I think these diseases are there from I think from the 90s, from the time we were born. So it's definitely our duty to educate the younger generation regarding what is right and what is wrong, sex education in schools and schools, colleges, and always protected sexual acts is better than unprotected sexual acts. So, any more doubts, Sahar? Let me know. I'll be happy to answer. Or Dr. Ardhanari can add any few points if he wants to.
Yeah. When it comes to exploring their sexuality, there is a significant rise in the number of people who are experimenting their sexuality. Like, say, for example, premarital sexual behavior has increased, and multiple sexual partners have increased. All these things have significantly on a rise today. But as you rightly said, it is their own choice.
Yeah.
And we need to be extremely careful before we, choose whatever we want to do. But I particularly, it is my opinion, our people are still not equipped enough to handle the emotional trauma that your sexual exploitation or sexual adventurous nature will lead you to. we are we just our generation just wants to be cool. They just say I'm a very cool person, I need to chill with people, I'm okay, I can handle all these things, but it is actually not the scenario. They try to experiment because another person is already doing it. They are being influenced by their peer groups. They think they will be abandoned, or they will be isolated from their groups, and these people involve themselves thinking that this is their choice. They are being pushed to make these kind of choices. These kind of people are getting more in number nowadays. Ultimately, these people come with a lot of mental health problems like depression. Some people also develop psychosis because of this. Some people develop severe substance abuse like alcohol or marijuana. Marijuana, when the use is significant, it is significantly become more nowadays. Marijuana use has become more. IV drug abuse has become very much higher than before. All this is because of their influence around them, and people think that there is a significant urge to be cool. They actually don't want to involve in all these activities, but if they don't involve, they become uncool. So to maintain their social status, children are forced to enter these kind of things. Once they enter, it is very difficult for them to get themselves out of it. By the time they realize, okay, they've gone too far, it becomes very late. They end up they get exposed to a lot of mental, physical, and sexually transmitted diseases, which destroys their life. So at this point of time, I would like to stress upon that it is your choice to make a very wise decision. It is okay to say no. We are viewing a lot of movies which keeps portraying that no means no, but nobody stresses that it is okay to say no. People are afraid to say no now. You need to say no. It is okay to say no. I will give you this particular, I will start this from my side, because many people think that it is not cool to say no. It is your right to say no. You will be the first person to say no and then walk away. You will still be appreciated for your bravery. At the end of the day, if nobody is appreciating you, you're safe. That is what matters more. You're safe, your family is safe, your friends are safe. If you want to go drink with somebody, you make sure that you're going with the right person. Before that, make a decision whether you really need to drink or not. Because at this point of time, 95% of the abusers are people who are known to somebody. 95% of the rapes, in 95% of the sexual violence against women is caused by somebody who is known to them. So you do not know where the monster is. You need not go and make yourself the prey for the monster. So choose wisely, and I would advise you to say no. Please say no. Yeah, that would be fine. Sahar, you have to unmute.
And a lot of emotional disturbances which adolescents have, even married couples, they don't go for and they don't ask for help basically. So rather they involve themselves in drug abuse and alcohol, and so it leads to a lot of trouble for the parents. They don't know how to handle these kids, and there are few instances where you can see the young man who's deteriorating his health come over and over because of alcohol. So I think it's definitely you have to seek out help whenever you feel so. If your friends are not helping you, if your family members are not helping you, there are a lot of platforms where you can go and ask for help. And this has to be insisted for every youngster in this generation. Yeah.
They don't understand that they should have felt ashamed to go and do something wrong. But on the contrary, people are getting ashamed to go and get themselves better.
Mhm.
It is always best to go and then, treat yourself and then make yourself a better person. You should never feel bad for that. You should never be ashamed of that, because you can be an example. You can be a survivor. You can be somebody who fought against your own, deficits or your own mistakes, and the one who has risen against whatever the society says that you are.
I know.
So you should be proud that you opted to go and then get treated and come out of something that you were doing wrong.
And asking for help is not a sign of weakness. That youngsters should definitely understand. So they think that it's below their dignity or what others will think, and what if my friend knows, what if my cousins know, then they'll think low of me. It's not like that. If you need help, you definitely have to seek out for it at the right time.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. I think we have just about enough time for a couple of questions from the audience. So there's a question. They are asking, could minoxidil topical root use cause infertility in males, ma'am? Minoxidil.
Okay, minoxidil is actually a vasodilator which is used over the scalp for increasing hair growth. I don't think it will cause male infertility, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Yeah.
for clearing that up. And also another question, ma'am. I think it's for you as well. Could you give a brief understanding of what phimosis is, and does that come under infertility or male infertility?
See, phimosis is the condition where the foreskin completely covers the opening of the urethra. So sometimes they may not be able to pass urine properly, and this can be treated easily through a small surgery. So yes, it can cause some pain during intercourse. So it is best to be treated before getting married. That would be my advice. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Divya and Dr. Arjanaji, for this very interesting and informative panel for sure. I'd like to ask Dr. Ramarao, our HOD, to please say a few words on the topic and about this program.
Can you
Sir,
call, sir? Can you call, sir?
I think he was on.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Divya Naranjan, who readily accepted to the last minute program that happened today. Thanks a lot, ma'am, from Department of Psychiatry, Meenakshi Medical College and Professional Helps. And I
I am
would like to,
very glad to be associated with all of you. Really, professional helps, Dr. Ardhanari, Dr. Sahar, Dr. Pawan, I'm so glad that you coordinated this program so well.
Yeah, but the coordination is mainly because of Mr. Pavan and Mr. Karthik. They had been of phenomenal help from the start. This is almost the 12th episode that we are conducting
Okay.
through professional helps, and they have been of most dedicated. And the commitment that these people show has making us reach better heights. Every single program that we do, the number of response that we get from the audience is phenomenal. Thanks a
True.
lot for Pavan, and thanks a lot for Karthik also. I thank my
Yes.
HOD also for giving us such a wonderful opportunity. Yeah, sir's available.
No, unfortunately, sir will not be able to come and join us for the end. But I would like to thank everyone uh, who joined us, especially the speakers. Thank you so much for dispelling so many myths and giving us so much information about what female infertility and sexuality is really all about. And definitely thanks to
And
professional
it's
for
the
this.
participants' duty to spread the awareness now. Don't keep it to.
Yes, definitely, ma'am.
Yeah.
And big thank you to Professional Health and uh, thank you
I
for
believe Karthik
giving
wanted to tell something.
Yeah, Karthik, kindly please
yes.
unmute yourself and brief about professionals. Yeah.
First of all, good evening. I thank the Dean of Meenakshi Medical College for giving us this opportunity to host the webinar. I also thank the HOD of Psychiatric Department for arranging such a wonderful session. I thank the speakers, Dr. Adnari Manikavasagam and Dr. Divyendra Rathe, for exclusively giving us information about male sexuality and infertility. Now, I also take this opportunity to explain the working of professional helps, which is a major doubt among the followers. So, professional helps is a medical awareness and an update organization, which is run by you undergraduate medical students. We work under a motto of value and education, which is assured that the information correctly reaches the society under a correct medical ethic. So the professional helps as 8 subsections in which each people work for a particular post or a particular video kind of information thing. So each team has an efficient leader who are able to initiate and mediate the flow of information in whatever way which result in a correct spectrum of post. I really thank the followers for supporting us in a grand way and giving us good solutions to make us much more better. I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, sir.